Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our panel this afternoon on building education entrepreneurship ecosystems. I am Kerry McDonald. I'm a senior education fellow at the Foundation for Economic Education and host of the twice-weekly Liberated podcast. Also an education policy fellow at State Policy Network, and the author of the 2019 book, Unschooled: Raising Curious, Well-Educated Children Outside the Conventional Classroom, that looked at the origin story of homeschooling, hybrid homeschooling, microschools, self-directed learning centers, and all kinds of schooling alternatives through the lens of self-directed education and that educational philosophy. And what's been so exciting for me over the past couple of years of meeting with and visiting and talking with education entrepreneurs across the country is just seeing this microschool movement and these schooling alternatives expand beyond sort of one educational philosophy focused on self-directed education to a whole variety of different educational philosophies and approaches, some of which you'll hear tonight or this afternoon with our panelists. And I'm thrilled to be joined on the panel by Shiren Rattigen, who is the founder of Colossal Academy, a microschool in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Dalena Wallace, who is the founder of AIM, which is a homeschooling collaborative in Wichita, Kansas, and she's also the president of WISE, Wichita Innovative Schools and Educators, which is a grassroots group of education entrepreneurs in the Wichita area. And Nicole Doyle, who is the co-founder of the Georgia Black Home Educator Network, and another place where there is a cluster of education entrepreneurship and innovation. And so it's really been interesting for me, again, over the past few years of interviewing entrepreneurs in my podcast and talking with folks like Shiren and Dalena and Nicole, of seeing what they're building in their local communities. And there's been a few sort of themes that I've taken away from that, a few similarities, despite all of this diversity. And I guess the first theme really is diversity. That these founders are incredibly diverse demographically and ideologically, and the programs that they're building are also extremely diverse, representing all kinds of different educational philosophies and approaches. I actually think that's one of the biggest strengths of the modern kind of microschool movement and all of this education entrepreneurship that we're seeing, is the fact that it is so diverse, that there is such an assortment of different educational philosophies that are embraced by this. Another key similarity or commonality that I've noticed with these education entrepreneurs is it's very decentralized. So these are everyday entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial parents and educators who are building solutions for their families and for their local communities from the bottom up. And it's really great to see that energy. I think that's what enables these founders to be very responsive to their communities and reflective of their communities. These models are also individualized. There's a real sense of making sure that they're creating personalized educational models, meeting each learner where they're at, instead of sort of this top-down conventional model of education that we've been so accustomed to for so long. So these founders, these education entrepreneurs, really trying to be focused on individualized, personalized learning. There's also a tremendous amount of collaboration, and that's where I can't wait for you to hear a little bit more of what these pioneers are really doing in their local communities. But trying to build community, again, across all of this diversity, all of these different models, coming together and creating spaces for community and collaboration. They refer each other to one another's programs. They'll say, you know, my program might not be a good fit for your child, but you should go down the road and talk to this founder, and that's a great program for them. So there's that sense of real collaboration and knowledge sharing and support that we're seeing, especially in these education entrepreneurship ecosystems. And then finally, the final theme or commonality that I see among all of these different education entrepreneurs across the country is a real focus on access. They want to be accessible programs, and that can look differently depending on the geographic area. So in Florida, where Shiren is located, Florida has robust school choice policies, and many of the students who attend microschools in Shiren's cohort are students who are attending on tax credit scholarship programs. So they're able to attend despite the tuition fees of these microschools, even though microschools are typically a fraction of the cost of traditional private schools, still inaccessible for a lot of families, and school choice policies help to make that more accessible. And then in other states, like in Kansas, which does not have robust school choice policies, there's still that same emphasis from these education entrepreneurs on making sure their programs are accessible, and that looks like public-private partnerships. I think of the Prenda Learning Pods that are emerging in Kansas. It can look like private philanthropy. It can look like sliding scale tuitions, and of course the VELA Education Fund, where these education entrepreneurs are getting some of their grant funding, often use that toward scholarships for families that otherwise wouldn't be able to attend. So those are kind of the key themes, really diversity, decentralization, individualization, collaboration, and accessibility that I'm seeing among education entrepreneurs across the country. And I'm really excited to kind of dig in more for you to hear the stories of these incredible entrepreneurs and the programs they're building and the ecosystems that they're supporting in their local communities. So we'll start with you, Shiren, and what you've been doing in South Florida and in the greater Fort Lauderdale area in particular. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you became an education entrepreneur.
Thank you. I'm Shiren Rattigen. I am the owner and visionary of Colossal Academy. We are a micro-school for curious and active teens and tweens. So basically me when I was 10, and also my 10-year-old. So we are working within our communities to grow food, and then we're also learning how to cook our food in a sustainable way. Something that Colossal Academy is doing as well is to make sure we are AI-proofing our youth, right? So that they're not going to be replaced by some robot or bot at some point, but we are really interested in making sure that our students have access to everything that every other child would have access to at an expensive, elite private school. So my journey is, I'm actually a 5th generation educator. So when it was my turn to go to university or move on to my career, I rebelled against education. I grew up with all my Christmas breaks, going into the classroom, cleaning out the closets, refiling things, making Christmas stockings for the families that my mom was going to be giving Christmas stockings to when we didn't have our own Christmas stockings. People sleeping on our sofas for students that didn't have a place to be during breaks. So I was like, I don't think I want that. I think I want to go somewhere else. But my grandfather was the superintendent of schools. My great-grandmother had a one-room schoolhouse on a farm. And then my great-great-aunt also was an educator. So I think education is just how we operate. That's how our family structure is. Everything is a learning opportunity. And so that comes through my veins naturally. The entrepreneurship is what I'm learning. And I feel that it's one of the hardest journeys to go on, but the most rewarding journey. And so what I did was just make sure that the students are always primary, the forefront, students are centered in what we're doing, and then I move from there and I pivot from there. My asks are always about making sure that they have what they need, and the way to know what they need is just to ask them and center their voices and amplify their voices. So that's a little bit about Colossal and my journey and how I got to where I am right now.
Thank you, Shiren. Dalena, tell us a little bit about your journey toward education entrepreneurship and WISE in Wichita.
Sure. So my name's Dalena Wallace. I'm a homeschool mom. I've been homeschooling for 10 years, and I love it. I enjoy it. I think it's a wonderful option, but I know that it's not the option for everybody. And in my journey as a homeschooler, I've realized that it just requires a lot of support, a lot of community, outsourcing on the things that I am not capable of teaching, and I have to just recognize my limitations. And from that, I've been able to reach out to others in my community and include them in our school, in our experience. And we were micro-schooling before we knew that that was a thing. I just opened up my home and included a couple of additional families and their kids in our learning environment, and we shared the workload. And I've also developed a co-op, and I'm the coordinator of this co-op that serves 12 families and up to 35 students. And through the journey of working with homeschool moms and realizing, just knowing from my own experience, how vital it is to have a rich community of colleagues and people to share resources with and to share support and encouragement with, I realized that the micro schools and these school founders and innovative educators in my area could also use a support system. And so I began to reach out to several of them and visit them in their schools. And I found it such an inspirational opportunity for myself to grow and to connect. And so I wanted to connect them with each other. So I'm the founder of WISE, Wichita Innovative Schools and Educators. And we have a network of about 25 to 30 innovative educators that are doing things outside of the traditional system, and they don't all look the same. We have a lot of diversity in what these educators are doing. Tutoring centers, hybrid schools. Some of them offer like a traditional micro school, which would be 5 days a week with just a smaller size of a classroom. And it's wonderful. The diversity comes with some of just the values that we each share as school founders. Some of them are intentionally secular. Some of them are intentionally faith-based. And that's just part of the beauty of it, is that none of the communities look the same, none of the kids look the same, or the families, and so they need to have a lot of variety. They need to have a lot of options so that they can go and find the school that suits their needs. And so that's kind of what we're doing.
Thanks, Dalena. Nicole, your journey toward homeschooling and co-founding the Georgia Black Home Educator Network.
So my homeschooling journey actually started in 2014. There's a wonderful little homeschool group I joined, DeKalb Christian Home Educators, and I started volunteering there, and after a couple of years, they asked me to be the president. Now, this homeschooling co-op, as Shiren was talking about with Legacy, it was founded in 1989, so I am president number 8. So being in the midst of home educators who actually had like grandparents bringing their kids to homeschool co-op, I just thought it was an amazing environment. But DeKalb Christian Home Educators, DCHE as we call it for short, basically is a very traditional homeschool co-op where parents are sharing resources and opportunities to make sure they're educating each other's children along with their children. We're very much a parent-led cooperative, meaning the parents sit together with the children and they advise on what curriculum we're going to do next year, where the resources are going to come from. We try to maintain our accessibility by only charging families $40 a year for membership to DeKalb Christian Home Educators, and they pay their some of the tutors directly if they need a tutor, but the parents do share that opportunity. But what I found was that so many parents were afraid of homeschooling and felt like they weren't equipped for it, that myself and another VELA recipient, Andrea Hall, we decided to we were co-founders of the Georgia Black Home Educators Network. And we decided to put on a conference that had workshops, advocacy groups, micro schools, private schools, homeschool co-ops, and private tutors, all in one place, and educational entrepreneurs that were giving the parents access, actually having workshops on, if your child comes out of a public school and you have an IEP, how do you draft a student education plan? What happens when you have a neurodivergent child and you're still trying to figure out how to curate their education to give them the best opportunities? So with that conference, we were able to host 276 attendees, 43 educational entrepreneurs in the space. A third of them were educational entrepreneurs who were serving the community, but not as educational entrepreneurs. They were just instructors. And after really having conversation with them, say, you are a business. Come on to the conference, package yourself as a business. We will give you, we had the opportunity to have sponsors so that we could provide them with their vendor space for free. And this was the first time they were able to showcase their educational services, because we are looking for a way for the home education community to be sustainable. And the only way we can be sustainable if we give our educational entrepreneurs, our former teachers who are starting new businesses, an opportunity to really meet the families who are seeking them, who respect them, and who are just really wanting to have them involved in their lives.
Great. I want to talk now about why families are choosing non-traditional educational approaches. And let's go back to you, Nicole, as someone who was homeschooling even before it became so popular over the past few years. We're still at pre-pandemic highs, record highs, a sort of doubling of the homeschool population from pre-pandemic levels. So what have you seen in terms of why families are choosing non-traditional education, and how have you seen that evolve or change over these past couple of years?
A couple of things. We have parents who definitely, they homeschool for faith-based reasons, they homeschool for individual reasons such as health reasons. We do have some children when they're in the schools because of the environment, HVAC systems, they stay ill. We also see parents who are homeschooling because they feel like that there is racial insensitivity in the curriculum. There are some cultural biases, racial biases. There is a marginalization of even, BIPOC children's intellect. Parents can seem a little bit too aggressive, and there are just lots of misconceptions. So many parents, and I had a parent to say this to me, she said, I just want my child to have uninhibited childhood joy. In the midst of this, she said, I am tired of my loquacious little girl seen as sassy and disrespectful, and I am tired of my rambunctious little boy being seen as aggressive and non-compliant. And that just really struck me because I was very surprised that in this post-pandemic era, I think many parents were at home with their children and had a one-on-one conversation and heard their children's hearts on, this environment is not working for me and it is stressing me out at a rate that no 8 or 9-year-old should be stressed out. I do know for myself as a traditional homeschooler, I went into homeschooling because a public school teacher, I was volunteering at the school so much because my son has ADD. And she said, you ever thought about homeschooling? and this is a public school teacher, and she said, because I really want to quit and homeschool. And so we sat down and had a whole conversation about homeschooling. And she did end up quitting and homeschooling her kids. And it just really opened my eyes to the fact that even some of the teachers were like, I feel like I'm putting Band-Aids on big system issues. So that's what brought me in my personal homeschooling to journey, and some of the things I've seen that parents are dealing with.
So Dalena, like Nicole, you were homeschooling pre-pandemic, and yet have seen just this tremendous growth in the greater Wichita area, thanks in large part, I would say, to your leadership as being a community builder there. Why are you finding that parents are drawn to non-traditional educational models?
There are several things happening, but two of the prominent reasons would be families really are wanting to be with their children. Families want to be together. Parents enjoy, for the most part, we all have our moments, but we enjoy being with our kids and being there for that aha moment. We like to see when the light bulb turns on, when learning happens. And it's important, if you have your family values, to be able to be the primary people to oversee their education and to oversee all of the dialogues, all of the resources and things. That's important. Families do want to make sure that their values are being imparted to their children, and that, again, is going to look different for each family, what those values are. But they want time together, they want to share their values, and then they also just really want to allow the time for the individualized learning to happen for each of their students. I have 6 of my own. They are all very different. They have different interests, they have different abilities, and I want to foster that. I want them to grow in the way that God created them and to be able to fulfill a mission that's unique to them. And in order to do that, they need to have time to develop their skills and to thrive in that.
So Shiren, you were a classroom teacher in both public and private schools, and then really entered the world of non-traditional education and microschooling as a result of the pandemic response and the education disruption there. So what are you finding in your community of South Florida that's attracting families to non-traditional models?
So I think people want to see education to be relevant. I think we're ready for a time that we're not just giving students worksheets and workbooks, and we're asking them to do arbitrary tasks that don't relate to the real world. My families are interested in seeing my students, who are entrepreneurs by nature, bring their projects to the market, right? We want to see that education is relevant rather than following a pre-prescribed blueprint that leads us to university that might not even guarantee us a job and might leave us with a ton of debt, right? And I think we're not buying into that anymore, not as teachers, not as parents, and hopefully we're ready to usher students to a new era where what they're doing has an impact around them, right? So I think the relevancy of education, why is it important to be doing the quadratic formula, Ms. Shiren, and I can give them the exact reason why and show them what that means and ask them to simulate it and then make some money from that, right? And then I think another reason is safety, to be honest with you. I think that, I know as a teacher I didn't feel safe all the time. I had to restrain students at a school I was in. And that is not how I wanted to spend my time in the classroom. I was like super pregnant, and I'm like on the floor, restraining a kid, trying to call for backup. And I was like, this is not what I intended for myself, right? And I think that parents got to have like a glimpse into that. So I think safety of not only like the physical safety, but also the emotional safety, that they can be seen and heard. Every parent, every person on the planet wants to be seen and heard, right? And I don't think that the current systems are necessarily allowing for that. And my solution is to maintain micro, right? I know every single child. I know every single child's sibling. I know their parents, their aunts, when their dog dies. I know everything about all my students. And when I had 150 students on my caseload, it was not like that. And I had zero empathy as to why you didn't get your homework done. And if it was a priority, you would have done it, right? Like, even me, Miss Frizzle, is like still not a nice person under those same circumstances. So the circumstances that are not working for families are not working for teachers either. And we are feeling, we have this imagination that we're gonna go and fix the world through education, through this beautiful vessel of education. We can change things. And then we get there and it's like budget cuts and PD days, and we have to hide in closets during red code drills, and it's not what we signed up for. And so I think, going back to your original question though, I think that it's really safety of both body and mind and soul of their child. I also think relevancy and making it relevant for the 21st century and beyond, right?
Great. I want to dig deeper into really these ecosystems of education entrepreneurship that are happening in each of your areas. I had the wonderful opportunity to spend some quality time in Fort Lauderdale and in Wichita, meeting with these education entrepreneurs there and seeing the community that you've helped to build and to facilitate. And that's actually available. You can look at the case study that I created for the VELA Education Fund that digs deeper into South Florida and Wichita on the VELA website. But what is happening there in your communities? It's also happening in Georgia, thanks in large part to Nicole's work. What is the community that you're seeing develop there? We'll go back to you.
So South Florida is so amazing, and I'm so happy and privileged to be as a part of this amazing organism that's forming there. It's like a petri dish of just magic happening. So we have like organizations like Surf Skate Science. If you don't know them, please check them out as soon as possible. But what they're doing is like taking kids out, and we can surf and we can skate, and we're learning about physics. And we have home economics teachers. We have art teachers that are taking kids out to the coral, the coral reef. And so, because Florida's warm, we are able to be outside a lot of the time. So a lot of what we're doing is place-based. But we've organized an Innovative Ed Network, which right now, the last meeting we were at had 74 people in attendance, which just meant, people who are really thinking about how can we pour in, what are my talents, and my plea to any educator out there, don't leave education, start your own thing. And so we had a lot of educators that are like, testing the water, like what's out there, what do we do, what's beyond the classroom? And so, yeah, our last meeting was 74 people in attendance. It was really big and super exciting. And we share resources as far as like how to get things done quickly. And I really think about South Florida as being like a neurological system, right? With like these beautiful electrical impulses. And we just share information in order to grow quickly, to serve our learners in the best way possible. We just have to be in community. And I really think, mothers are in the forefront of this movement of education, and I think we're collaborative by nature, and I also know that education is collaborative by nature. And so because we are the ones that are actually running this next movement, it's really natural for us to collaborate and to be in community together and to share resources and to applaud each other and to show up to each other's events and share links and just be in partnership. So South Florida is where it's happening right now, so please, keep your eyes open for what's happening there.
So Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Wichita, Kansas, very different geographically, and yet the same cluster of education, entrepreneurship, and innovation, that same momentum. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in Wichita, Dalena.
I'm so proud of our group, of our educators. I am just so proud to be a part and to be able to advocate for them and to just shine a spotlight on what they're doing, because I can't take any credit for what they're doing. They've got their hands to the plow, they've got their head down, they are doing the work. The only thing I'm doing is helping them to find each other and to realize that they're not alone and to encourage them. And that's something that VELA has been great at. I would say 80% of us or more have received a VELA grant. And in doing that, that's also allowed us to connect with each other through the Mighty Networks community. But that's also helped to validate each and every one of these entrepreneurs to tell them that you are doing a great thing. And we have a lot of variety and diversity in even their backgrounds of why they're doing what they're doing and how they came to start their businesses. Several of them, I see two different groups here. I see the former homeschool mom who had been doing education with her own children and who just thought, I want to serve my community more. I want to open my doors. I want to reach out and offer what I'm doing on a larger scale. And that's been beautiful. It's been successful. That's kind of my method because I'm already serving my own children. And I'm able to cater their education the way that, I need it to be for them, but also to open and to expand that as a business for others. And so that's one way of doing things. The other side, the other group would be former public school teachers. And like Shiren was talking about, just kind of realizing, I love education. I love being with my kids. But I don't love this. I don't love this system. I don't love all of the bureaucracy and all of the things, that are limiting them. And so they've taken the step. We have several. We have a couple, Candace and her friend Sarah, who were teaching in the same school district and had talked about for years maybe stepping out someday and starting a private school on their own. And after the pandemic, that year they were like, this is it, we're gonna do it. They thought they might start a micro school, maybe have about 40 students. I think they were going to rent a basement of a church. They had an informational meeting and had just overwhelming interest. And they now have over 120 students enrolled in their school, and they've hired additional teachers. So that's one example. We also have a husband and wife who were teaching in the same school district along with her best friend. And the three of them currently, just now this spring, have resigned from their position at the same school, and they're opening a new hybrid model of schools. So I just see that there's a lot happening, and it's fun. It's so fun for me, and it's invigorating, and it's contagious. And that's what I love, is the more that they learn about what each other is doing, and the more that our community can hear about the options that are available, families are starting to be interested in saying, wait, there's another way, there's another option, I need to learn more about this. And then these educators, these visionaries are thinking, hey, if they could do it, I think I might just take the first step.
I love that, invigorating and contagious. And Nicole, you're seeing that in Georgia as well. You had this conference with all kinds of people coming together to share their views. You have just this growing homeschool population and microschool community there. Tell us about what is happening in Georgia.
So I think in Georgia we have so many micro schools, homeschool pods, homeschool cooperatives that really are in different parts of metro Atlanta and some in southern Georgia, and we just don't know each other. And so many of us have been having a conversation, and one of the things that came up was we may not have the most financial capital, but we definitely have social capital to sit with one another and have conversations and to share resources. Like my homeschool co-op, DeKalb, we share teachers with 2 other homeschool co-ops. So I have a teacher who was teaching an African-American literature, like story time. And so now she's teaching African-American literature on the high school level at one of the other co-founders of Georgia Black Home Educators. And so we were able to actually have this African-American literature to count as not just an elective. In the state of Georgia, it is American literature. We just decided to change the curriculum to make sure we replace some of the authors. And so when you have parents come together and say, this is what I would like to see, I would like to see more nourishing literature and an image that shows myself and shows what my children are going through in whatever ethnicity, religion, or lifestyle you're living. What we're finding is that when you give parents that type of freedom and you're having these conversations, they are able to be extremely powerful. And so with our conference, the main thing about our conference was, we had our motto was we're here to equip, encourage, and energize. No matter what method you choose that's best for your family, I cannot emphasize enough, you figure out what's best for you. Once you empower parents to say, whatever method is best for you, and we will connect you, introduce you to the resources, you cannot stop this movement and this mission. And we're just also very excited in our community. We've had a lot of people who've been private instructors. They've taught piano for 20 years, but this teacher has never had a website, no social media. She still takes checks. So she prefers money orders sometimes. And so I'm like, okay, we have more students who would really like to, so to help her and with VELA, this particular teacher, this will be her first time applying for the VELA grant. She did not realize that there was assistance to be able, because she has students that sometimes she say, okay, so financially you can't afford it, so guess what? You just come free this month. And then she makes do, and these parents are coming to her home for their children to continue to have these music lessons. So we're just very thankful to be able to be in a space to introduce these new educational entrepreneurs to the opportunities that VELA has made available to our community for sustainability.
It's really great. One thing that often comes up when we talk about non-traditional learning spaces is how do you measure outcomes, measure success? Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. Some of you use traditional standardized tests, and some of the folks in your networks also use those metrics, but others use different kinds of measures of success and measures of outcomes. I know, Nicole, you talked about joy being a priority. I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about what success looks like in the community that you're in.
So we do believe in testing at my particular homeschool co-op, but it's all optional. So we have a teacher, a former teacher who actually will facilitate the ITBS or CAT 10 to our students. The current director at Association for Christian Schools International, Dr. Althea Penn, was one of my grandparents who was helping us, and she's now the director of the early childhood education department. She, for years, would administer these tests for us and everything, and we're just so proud of her. She's moved on into doing great things. But outcomes are also measured by children walking into spaces and feeling confident to really take what is their identity into the next level. So I talk about, we have one graduate of our homeschool group. His name is Obasi Shah, and he, Harvard University, his senior thesis was a rap album. And he was able to put that together because, Socratic discussion has always, through classical conversation, been a part of our homeschooling group. We also have other successful homeschool graduates, but we also have many people who've actually gone to the military, and we've guided them through, well, did you want to go into the Air Force? And we will bring in representatives if that's what the direction they would like to do. We also have students who have gone on to be entrepreneurs. At my homeschool, the conference, we had one of our homeschool graduates who has an animal rescue farm, and so at the conference, many people got to experience a flying squirrel flying and landing on their shirt for the first time. And so it's just to be able to say to these children, the sky is the limit. So I'm also your advocate for your parents to do whatever they feel is your particular gifting. I feel like everyone harnesses an individual genius. Sometimes we just have to figure out what it is, and that's really the power of having parents and educational entrepreneurs who every child is seen as amazing from the start. We're not worrying about stereotypes or what someone else is thinking or what the culture tells us. It's like, when I see your child, the outcome, I see the sky is the limit. And so to encourage those parents financially, helping them in ways, and emotionally to run that race is while we're trying to make sure that we equip, encourage, and energize as parents to do such things.
So great. Dalena, what does success look like for the innovative educators and entrepreneurs in the Wichita area?
Again, there's just a lot of diversity with each school and how they decide to do that. Some of them do go ahead and do the traditional state assessments. Some of them are doing something a little bit different, maybe a value-based assessment. Again, that comes into play. Whatever the families are saying, this is what we want this child to be working on and learning. Some of it is as simple as, this little guy needs to increase his ability to keep his attention on a task. Some of it is, we want them to develop their critical thinking skills. We want them to develop their conversation skills. And we can't undervalue those things because that's just a very valid area of life. We go for a holistic approach when we're thinking of education, educating the whole child, not just in academics and math and English. And those things are relatively easy to measure without needing, like, say, an end-of-the-year assessment. When you're a parent who's constantly got the finger on the pulse of each child, or if you're a micro school teacher or guide and you have, like, say, a classroom of 10 students, it's very different than when you have a classroom of 30 plus, or if you're managing 180 students and you have to figure out where everybody's at. When you're looking at, and in our home, what we do is mastery-based learning. As they're learning a lesson, they don't go to the next lesson until it's mastered. And so what more assessment do you need than that? If you're doing a unit study and you have a test or a quiz at the end of the week, these are simple, small-scale ways to just keep your finger on the pulse and see where your kids are at, and you can recognize the growth. And who are you reporting that to? Who is it important that needs to know how your child is doing, who's more important than the parent and the child in this. So I feel like as long as the child can see and measure that they're growing, a lot of times it's as simple as they have been working on a book report. They haven't accomplished a completed project at the end of studying a specific unit or a book. These are all ways to measure growth, which are valid, and I think we just kind of need to push back a little bit and think outside the box when it comes to things like, how do you assess a child and how do you determine whether they're successful?
Absolutely. Shiren, what does success look like at Colossal Academy as well as in the greater Fort Lauderdale microschool ecosystem?
Sure. So at Colossal Academy, we do take a national assessment. This is a state requirement for the avenue that I chose to go into. And my students are doing really well in comparison to their peers, and so I'm glad to take the test. The students don't even know when we're going to take it. We take so many different other personality tests and other, like, what's your favorite color and what does it say about you kind of tests, that when we get to take the math and the language arts, I'm like, and we're going to take this test today too, right? And here's some paper, but don't talk for the next 35 minutes to an hour. So so we do a standardized test. Again, that's a state requirement. Students build their own portfolios and websites. So this is a big indicator for me of what they're learning. What are they learning? And how are they interpreting what they're learning, right? We have the anchor of math and language arts through Florida Virtual. And then everything else is place-based, experiential, interdisciplinary. And so the portfolio is really the guide and the curator's opportunity to be able to look in through their eyes about what they're doing. And if they like the subject, they'll write a ton. And if they really hated that, they'll, like, the 2-sentence requirement is there, you know? So they're building portfolios and websites. They're taking the map. We are also checking in with parents frequently to see how they are seeing their child. But more than that, what's important to me as a mother, as a true educator, is their math esteem, right? The child that, like, didn't want to go to the board and work out the problem is now actively raising their hand, answering with confidence, maybe right or not, but the esteem is there, and the willingness to go and help someone else because they believe that they can do it, right? That to me is a larger outcome than the NWEA, which they're doing great at, but also just their willingness to talk about a subject that has caused them trauma. I have a student that came in front of the entire class, the teacher said he was stupid. And so he completely shut down and came in at a 4th grade math level as a 12-year-old, and now he's doing flawlessly 8th grade math, and this is only in 2 years, right? And he's helping others and explaining things and concepts, but you have to, like, heal the trauma first in order to get to the child and rebuild their confidence. So that to me is success. And yeah, you know, just joy. How should we be spending our adolescence? Adolescence is the most, I think you can all think back to really horrible, traumatic times of adolescence, but we can do it different. There's a new way to do it, and that centers them, gives them autonomy, gives them freedom, gives them outlets to be able to seek thrill so that they're whole and they're enjoying their adolescent time, so that when they talk about their teenage years with their children, they're like, those are the best years of my life. You guys are gonna have a great 12 and 13-year-old experience. So those are outcomes for us.
That's great. I want to ask one more question and then pause to open it up for questions from the audience. Shiren, you mentioned that in your latest gathering of education entrepreneurs, you had nearly 75 people, many aspiring education entrepreneurs and microschool founders. What is your advice to them, or to anyone who is considering starting some kind of unconventional learning model? What do you say?
I think that first you need to really center yourself and see the vision that you have and trust that that is the vision, that vision can come to fruition. So if you have a vision for something, chase it. Like, why not? Just do it. Like, it's not that, it's the internal dialogue, the inner saboteur that you have to get over first. And then just try. Like, the worst that could happen is that it could fail and you go back to doing what you were doing before, right? But there's a whole bunch of beautiful lessons that come with it about yourself, about maybe business, about education, about systems. And so, you know, my advice is to just do it and just really sink into the vision and find center. My next would be make sure that you have all of the self-care like systems in place for you, because it is a rocky road. And the third, for me, is going to be like, if you have a vision and if you have an idea, if you're already doing something, apply for the VELA. It's really going to give you the stamp of approval that some of us need. Like, are we doing this right? Is this worthy of being funded? And if it is, you'll be funded, and then you get to do the project that you had a vision for. And I think that for me was like such a huge, like, really, somebody thinks that what I'm doing is good, you know? And so those are my 3 probably top advices.
Great advice. Dalena, advice for prospective education entrepreneurs?
I would add to what Shiren said and just say network. Just reach out. One of the things I did before I was part of the VELA network was just a Google search. I'm a curious person, and I might not be, I know I'm not the most gifted teacher, and that's unfortunate because I'm teaching my children, but I also am able to find those amazing teachers for my kids, and I'm not afraid to outsource. I'm not afraid to share the workload. And in my search and Googling, I'm just typing in like, who's got a tutoring center, who does after-school programs, who has classes, all the terms you can think of to locate these people who are doing something different, and then go and meet them, interview them, visit their schools, and you'll be inspired, I'm certain. And if you need additional inspiration, then join the VELA network and just look around, and your mind will be blown as you see the amazing things that are happening.
Nicole, what advice do you give to the entrepreneurs that you speak with, as well as kind of general people who are interested in this path?
I would start where Shiren was talking about, vision planning. I mean, vision mapping, I know people like really, when you sit down and you really go, what is the biggest top off the box dream that you want? And sometimes, like she said, the doubter is really you. You're really afraid that, does that make sense? Is that going to make money? But when you focus not on the financial portion, but you're in that big dream of how you're going to change legacy, individual families, and how it's going to add richness to the whole society of the world, and you start there, everything else will fall into place, because then you'll look around and realize that you have the network. You have that social capital of having like-minded people who are like, I believe that we can create something new in education. I believe that we can prioritize families and give parents every single tool. And like I said, VELA, I guess we're all gonna say VELA like 5 times. Like, we're going to Mighty Networks. I found Andrea, my co-founder, on Mighty Networks. And then also within the homeschooling community I had before, and to find people, as I say, all the time. I have a network of parents that I borrow genius from all the time. I have an attorney. Get an attorney. Sign no contracts without an attorney looking at it. That would be also one of my pieces of advice. But to have these people, someone who understands how to market in tech, someone who understands within your group the legal, parameters and things like that. I would say go to the network. Please apply for the VELA grant. I did meet some social entrepreneurs at my conference who said they applied a few and they didn't get the VELA grant. And so next month, we are working with them in an online virtual cohort to go through what exactly were some of the hiccups and problems or things you maybe didn't understand. I've also encouraged them to please reach out to VELA and say, what were some of the things that I didn't check off appropriately when they were applying for it? And don't be afraid to tap back into the network to say, I don't understand, I need help. That is, I call that big girl, that's that big girl advice. You're like, I don't know what to do. Please, somebody help me and show me the direction. But VELA can definitely help you in that way.
Such great advice. So let's open it up to your questions for these incredible panelists.
Thank you. You all are so inspiring, and you are really empowering the next generation. It's really exciting. I guess my question is for Nicole. I'm wondering if you find that in your community, childcare is a big obstacle for people who are considering homeschooling, especially lower income families, and if you've seen any creative ways that people are dealing with childcare, either through creative childcare solutions or through career transitioning, like maybe changing jobs to work remotely.
Yeah, so at my homeschool co-op that I work at on a weekly basis on Wednesdays, we actually, because we have a huge amount of space, and with that space came the opportunity for parents who work from home. We with the VELA grant, we were able to expand our Wi-Fi. We were able to actually move into a space where parents who are working from home can be on teaching. Some of them I have a lot of virtual teachers who teach virtually or whatever their job, telecommute jobs, and they're able to be there during the day. Also, we find that a lot of parents are just functioning in sharing the child care load that they're doing. With my homeschool co-op, we're not a drop-off. So I try to make a way in every way possible for parents to be able to stay during the day. Now, this is where the Georgia Black Home Educators Network comes into play. My homeschool co-op may not be a fit for you, but definitely if you meet a micro school situation, you can go to April Jackson at Pass Network, or you can work with Tiffany Ferguson in a private school at the Ferguson School, Tiffany Blassingame at the Ferguson School. And so we're able to say, yes, what I'm doing here may not work for you, but no, you're not out of the loop. We will definitely figure out ways for you to also do that. Also, because of Dr. Penn, who works with Association for Christian School International, she's also helped some of our parents to apply for, in Georgia, there is a child care grant. And so she helps them to navigate through those pathways to be able to get the child care grant that works with actual child care at daycare centers and places like that.
We have a question down here.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Simon. I'm also a former teacher, like Shiren, and I'm also the co-host of the Great Teacher Resignation podcast. And we get a lot of our guests who are former teachers or they're current teachers, and they're looking to leave education in the traditional sense. And your story was so inspiring. So I'm wondering what I could bring back to our listeners and to people in this room. What is your greatest need in your communities that you think a former teacher could fill?
Is this directed towards me? Yeah. We have all kinds of needs. But I would say, our expertise in understanding and discerning when a child, it's too much, it's too little, they need more. Also, we have a plethora of toolboxes, so Mammoth Math isn't working, so I'm going to switch over to Singapore Math, we know how to kind of find that child. And I think that all homeschool cooperatives could use an educator that has just like a breadth of knowledge of what curriculum, right? But also understanding what aligns, what doesn't align with state standards. We're trained to be able to work within a classroom setting, and so I really think that part of where they could be useful is whatever they thought they were going to be, just go be it. If you thought you were going to be the best art teacher and everybody's going to draw on the walls and we're going to be putting mud all over our bodies, go do that. Because we're looking for you. My kids are like, I want to draw all over myself. And I'm like, I'm Googling it right now. I don't know. So just to follow the vision of what you had for yourself as an educator. I really truly believe that education is a sacred vocation. I think we're called to it for some reason. I think we're there to serve not only the academic needs, but the soul of a child. And so whatever that vision of what you thought you were getting into, go do that. And if it's not being supported at your local school, then you're going to have to get out of the system to find it and create it. If it's not your own micro school, there are micro schools that would love to have you. We're hiring, so if there's any in South Florida. But, outside of the system, people need people who are inside the system because we're in the bridging years, right? We're not in the futuristic schools where everybody is just happy and we're all at our own level and we're mixed as far as age level and everybody is just happy, right? That's not where we're at. We're moving from the old system into the new system. And so as we're doing that, we're going to need people to be able to bridge between the old and the new. But ultimately, just really think back what brought you to the Ed 101 class and go be that and do that. And there's space and there are families that are looking for you.
Great question and response. Another question?
Can I add something to that? The homeschooling community, we respect the skill set that teachers bring. I mean, let's be honest, some of us, classroom management is non-existent in homeschool co-ops. We're like, okay, I don't know what to do next. But to be able to have a trained educator who can kind of take a look over what you're doing to say, you know what, you need to scaffold this a little bit differently. You have some things that I am noticing because of my educational background and experience. And so I tell education providers who are former teachers, this is a community that is not against you. We respect the fact that you have walked through some fires that we don't even want to touch. So we are saying, come on, come to us with your best, the dream, like she was saying, that dream teacher you wanted to be. We're looking for that teacher.
So thank you for this session. I learned a lot, and full disclosure, my child is a part of Nicole's co-op as well.
Latasha? Oh.
Yeah, you didn't see me the whole time, taking pictures, taking videos. Yeah. And so we've been really blessed to be a part of the co-op. I'm an educator as well, but I have a question just about concrete like training for entrepreneurship. So I'm also a VELA recipient, and I support homeschool families as well. But what I need is some concrete training on taking what I have to the next step. And I know Nicole's been working hard with her team on actually working with universities to get us trained. So like I'm looking at, getting an MBA, working on other things. So what advice, support, strategy, or whatever, where do you think we should look for those things? Because we have a great network. I'm a part of a lot of those. I'm an educator and I train teachers, so I have all the education stuff. I have the network. But what concretely do I need, or where can I go to actually scale what I'm doing?
Great question.
I mean, I'm coaching right now, so you can always come and ask, and I'm happy to field anything I'm learning. I'm so happy to share, right? So you can always book a meeting with me on my website. But I think, some of the tools that I used, I went to my score, and I just asked questions, and I would meet someone, and they'd be like, I'm a lawyer. I'm like, great. What do you know about? And then they'd be like, oh, I don't do that kind of law. And then I'm like, oh, there's different types of law. That's interesting. And so then I'm like, okay, so what kind of lawyer should I be looking for? Like education law, but maybe more specifically with policy, right? And I'm like, okay, Google that, right? So like, I think, finding a mentor, and your mentor doesn't have to be your always and forever. I have like many mentors in many different areas, mentors that help me with marketing, mentors that help me with the financial, how do I set up my QuickBooks, what should I be using, how do I pay people, how many people do I have to have, all those kind of like questions of like, how do I run a business? There, I started with SCORE. That was kind of my, and SCORE is free if anybody is looking for that kind of thing. But it helped me set my compass in a direction. But what I found was really just people who were doing things like me to have them in network. Kind Academy and Compass Outreach were both amazing mentors to help me figure out, okay, how do I apply for my school license? What website? How do I do all that stuff? So finding other people who are doing something similar to what you want to do, and then signing up. So find out what your deficiencies are, identify those, and just point your ship in that direction. Like I said, if it's law, just find any lawyer. You're a lawyer? Okay, at the Starbucks line. Like get crazy about your passion, because that's how crazy I am. I'm like, oh, did you say? Yeah, I would just like overhear someone at a restaurant and say, oh, did you just say law? Hi, I'm Shiren from Colossal Academy. And they're like, okay, weirdo, but I don't care. It's all good. So that's, SCORE is a good place. Joining the VELA network is a great place. Asking people who are doing what you want to be doing, and just set your compass in one direction and just go until you get the answer.
Also, I just want to make sure that I put this out here. So Chick-fil-A has a foundation, and the Chick-fil-A is doing the Impact Accelerator for nonprofits in April. So if you Google it, it's free if you're doing the virtual one. Because I live in Atlanta, so I was able to get a chance. I'm actually going to go there. But if anybody's like, there are some things with the nonprofit structure you're wondering about, the Chick-fil-A Impact Accelerator is, so if you Google that and look it up, you'll be able to apply for that. And I think they have unlimited virtual spots versus the in-person spots. So actually look into that.
We are coming up against time, but it's such an exciting time in education thanks to entrepreneurs like our panelists today. There is growing demand from parents for more individualized, more non-traditional, more bespoke educational models, and it's entrepreneurs and innovators like the three of these panelists who are building those new learning models to satisfy that demand. So Shiren Rattigen, Dalena Wallace, and Nicole Doyle, thank you so much for being on the panel.